Mr. Moore,
Here.
Mr. Neal,
Here.
Mr. Fishback,
Here.
Mr. Bohan,
Here.
Ms. Washington, here, Mr. McGinnis.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We will need to make a motion to approve the amended agenda that you got in your packet for an incorrect date. May I have a motion and a second? Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We have the approval of the minutes for July 28th, 2011.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We can continue on with item number 4A. Ms. Washington.
Item number 4A, North Ridgewood Overlay Area, rezoning North Ridgewood Overlay Area, DEV 2011-038.
Okay, Mr. Mazzari.
Thank you. Dennis Merzai, planner with the City of Daytona Beach. The first item we have tonight, item 4A, is a rezoning for the North Ridgewood Overlay Area. My screen's up there going. This is a staff request to establish the North Ridgewood Overlay classification, reducing possible negative impacts to the North Ridgewood area that may have resulted from changes in surrounding redevelopment areas, including restrictions to uses that may have been located or relocated to the area as a result of redevelopment area restrictions. Staff is acting at the direction of the City Commission, and this was to develop protection to the North Ridgewood area. Staff held 2 meetings with the North Ridgewood area community stakeholders, and staff has developed the proposed North Ridgewood overlay classification. The following area has been identified as the North Ridgewood overlay area by staff, and I'll walk it through you a little bit and give you an idea of the locations.
Dennis, did you talk at the beginning? You might have missed it. You're going to cover both of these items?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Together?
I'm gonna begin with this item, and I'll go right into the text amendment because they're tied together, and one can't really work without the other. So, thank you, Rich. All right, so this is the area that's up there in the north part of the city. North Ridgewood area is what we're calling it. Give you an idea of where we're looking. That's Holly Hill to the north of the area. It's the Blue Road redevelopment area to the east. That's the downtown redevelopment area to the south. You see the Midtown redevelopment area to the south and to the west. On the far west side, you see a single-family zoning district. After we put these in place, you see we have a donut in a hole in a donut there, which is the area that is going to be making up the North Ridgewood overlay area. Okay, regulations governing these uses within the proposed North Ridgewood area are included in the accompanying agenda item 4B, which just went over. Also, this is almost the second phase that we're looking at for the restrictions for social services. Recently passed social services in the redevelopment areas. This is the social service or the uses in the North Ridgewood area. You can expect for staff to bring back something citywide to address some of the social service uses at a very near planning board.
By that, you're meaning next month.
Hopefully next month. Yeah, that's our goal is to come back and get that started.
For the comp plan.
Perhaps that we're looking at different things, and that might be a vehicle for us to do something citywide on that. All right, as we look at the recommendations for this particular overlay, and again, this overlay is just defining the boundaries for what the North Ridgewood overlay will be. Staff is recommending the approval of the rezoning request. The item is tentatively scheduled, we heard, before the City Commission for first reading on October 5th, which is a public hearing, and also a second reading October 19th, also a public hearing. An affirmative vote of 6 would be required by the planning board to recommend approval to the city commission. And again, this is in concert with item 4B, which is the text amendment portion of the North Ridgewood overlay. And again, it is a staff request to establish the North Ridgewood overlay classification in the defined area, establishing regulations for the North Ridgewood overlay area, and specific restrictions, specified uses within the designated overlay area. Again, I'll just give you a quick, that's the area we're looking at again. At the direction of the City Commission, staff has researched ways to reduce current negative impacts to the North Ridgewood area and research possible impacts that may result from the changes in the redevelopment area's allowable use schedule, which was recently modified by the City Commission. For the proposed Land Development Code text amendment, the purpose really is to provide a restriction of uses that may be located or relocated to the area as a result of the redevelopment area restrictions. The North Ridgewood area is a gateway to the city and currently does not project that image. This area has developed indications of economic regression. The North Ridgewood overlay classification established, this will establish that North Ridgewood classification as an overlay classification within the Land Development Code. At this time, should point out that this request does not include resident proposed. There was a talk of a neighborhood improvement district possibly be included in this amendment, this text amendment. That is not included in this. We wanted to keep that separate out of this as we were looking at the social services. Also, in that light, commercial development standards also are not included in this portion of the text amendment. Recently, we had some design standards come through the planning board. Right now, they're with the City Commission, and these are commercial design standards for along the major city thoroughfares, including Ridgewood and parts of Fairway and or Fairview and also Mason. Another thing also, and we mentioned before, there is a TPO study underway that is looking at the entire corridor, the US 1 corridor that's being funded by the TPO. And what staff is looking to do is hopefully we can piggyback on some of the things that they're doing, use some of their data that they collect, and maybe use that to do things to improve the commercial area along North Ridgewood.
And excuse me, TPO is what?
Transportation Planning Organization.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ah, that's what happened to it. Okay.
Since the last time we were here a couple of months ago, we were in the process of collecting data. We had some data, but we were looking for additional data. I've put together some of the data that we have collected and tried to give you some of the numbers of some of the trends and some of the things that we have seen. One of the things we looked at was population data, and this was based on some of the census counts that we had gotten. Unfortunately, all of the census information isn't in yet, so we're just kind of working with what we have. The census blocks they get into very specific blocks in very specific areas. We were able to identify the North Ridgewood area having 34 blocks, area census blocks, that we can take a look at for a change in population from the year 2000 to 2010. What we saw when we looked at the overall block totals was based on the 2000 population and the 2010 population showed only a decrease of 20 residents for the entire area. That number was a little bit skewed. We do have one block within this area. In 2000 had a population of 3. 2010 had a population of 247. Should point out that is the block that consists of the North Center, the STAR facility. And so that's where the increased numbers come from. Without that in there would have been a dramatic difference in the number of residents for that area.
Does that mean there are 247 people living there?
The
They use the addresses, the ID card thing, that,
For the census.
Yeah.
okay,
The census shows that many.
on that block. Okay,
So they don't live there.
One of the other things we looked at, we had gotten some stats from the police department, so we want to take a look at trends, and these are trends for the North Ridgewood area over the last 10 years. What we've seen, the first one I'm going to show you, these are incidents by year. Saw a spike in 2002, but then a steady decline with a small blip in 2009, but you can see that there is a steady decline over the years. And this is dating back, again, since 2001. The next chart shows us the arrests by year. What we see in this one, and this is, again, the North Ridgewood overlay area over the last 10 years, we do see a significant spike up in the year 2006, which amounts to a little over 1,500 arrests for that area. Since that time, as you can see, we've had a steady decline in crime in that area. What we don't have to really take a good look at this data is something to compare it to. We'd like to request from the city, from the police department, we wanted to see some citywide numbers, so we'd have a number to compare to when we look at the crime in one particular area. How does that relate to the crime all over the city? Are we seeing a similar type of a reduction, or less of a reduction, more of a reduction? Unfortunately, we don't have those numbers from the police yet. We're still working on them, trying to put those together, and hopefully we'd be able to have them. But at this point, these are the only numbers that we have for the crime. Another thing that we also asked for that we thought might be interesting was the amount of resources that were put into this area. If we're seeing a decrease in crime in this one particular area, was there an increase in manpower or any other resources to help bring those numbers down? Maybe more so than maybe in other parts of the city. Well, we haven't received that information yet either. We took a look at property values. What we do have, we have a citywide property value showing a little bit of a upward trend and a downward trend. I think it's something that's probably pretty common for most areas, whether how drastic it was up and down, but most of them have gone down. What we do not have, and what we've been asking for, is from the property appraiser, and unfortunately it's a very busy time for them right now, is to be able to get some values specific to this area over the last 10 years, so we can see in a comparison what kind of values we had over the last 10 years, and if it's following the same pattern citywide, so we can be able to make a determination if that would be a difference there. Something else we just looked at, just as the saturation of uses, the number of uses within the proposed North Ridgewood overlay area. The numbers you see over here, they were actually the same numbers that we were using that we had gotten from United Way. I also should point out that this is not all of the uses that may be in an area. United Way doesn't have every single social service use listed with them, so there may be some out there. So now we're starting our cross-reference, and we're taking some of our information and some of United Way's information and some of our, hitting the streets and kind of seeing what's out there, and we're going to be putting all of that information together. But this information is still from the United Way information, and it was really an apples-to-apples comparison of what we were doing in our city versus what some of the surrounding communities were doing. So the last time we came here, we had a proposal to, we had given you a list of uses in the North Ridgewood area, and it was staff's recommendation to prohibit all of these uses in the North Ridgewood area. Now, based on some of the information that we put together, we have modified that request or that proposal to maybe go back to what the original task force had put together for conditional uses. If you take a look at the screen there, I've highlighted in red the uses that we have moved over from the prohibited to a conditional use, the community residential homes and similar facilities, congregate meal facilities, food pantries, and recovery home and treatment facilities. Also note in the blue, you see homeless services, and it says, except where specifically allowed as a conditional use. If homeless services were strictly a prohibited use, some of these other conditional uses, excuse me, might fall under the same category of what a homeless service is, and it would not allow those. It would prevent those from going in. So we think with that, with the restrictions that we have for the conditional uses, we're able to have a certain amount of homeless services that might meet those those requirements. Okay. The conditional uses in the North Ridgewood overlay area. Proposed for conditional uses, we have food pantries, substance abuse and rehab centers, abuse prevention centers, community facilities, congregate meal facilities. All of these must comply with the underlying zoning, and they all must meet additional specific conditions and regulations associated with their conditional use. First off, I wanted to go through these because what we're looking at on these conditional uses, it's the definition of what it is, and it's more than just maybe a proximity. It's also what might be required of an agency that would be a conditional use. So I do want to go through these. I think it's important. For the food pantry, it's any building or structure or portion thereof that prepares or stores food for consumption off-site for individuals. So there is no consumption on-site. People coming in, grabbing a bag, and they're leaving and taking it to a different location to eat the food. The following conditions apply. Does not provide direct individual service to clients on site, which is coming and going. Is not located within 250 feet of a residentially zoned area, and it's not located within 500 feet of a similar facility. And I did put maps in the packet, and I can go with the, I'm going to go over later with you how to read the maps a little bit better, but the maps will show you what might be located in a certain area and what the proximities are for to residential or to similar facilities. All right, substance abuse and rehab centers. This is a type of medical office. It's established to aid persons affected by excessive or illegal use of drugs, alcohol, narcotics, or other hallucinatory substances who have developed a dependency on such substances, including but not limited to methadone maintenance facilities and outpatient rehabilitation facilities. The conditions that are associated with this use, not located within 500 foot of a residential zoned area, not located within 1,000 feet of a similar facility. The hours of operation are limited from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Waiting areas for clients must be provided within the building. There would be no waiting outside the building with these uses. Clients scheduled by appointments only, so there are no walk-ins. They would not be located in any, well, this would be out because it's really a redevelopment element. And there's no residential use allowed. So there are no overnight accommodations. Let's see, the conditional uses for an abuse prevention center. This is a facility that offers counseling services or temporary emergency shelter for preventing or remedying neglect, abuse, or exploitations of children and adults unable to protect their own interests, or preserving, rehabilitating, or reuniting families. The following conditions do apply for this use. Overnight accommodations are limited to a maximum of 12 clients. This does not include the children of the clients. Professional supervision required on-site at all times for overnight accommodations, and not located within 500 feet of a similar facility. And I think almost done. Community facility is a facility, place, or building accommodating 7 or more clients, which is maintained and operated to provide residential care, daycare, and or home finding services for children and or adults, including but not limited to the physically handicapped, mentally impaired, or incompetent persons, developmentally disabled, mentally disordered, court wards and dependents, neglected, or emotionally disturbed children or adults, alcohol or drug-addicted children or adults, battered adults or children and aged persons. Conditions associated with a community facility include must be in compliance with state law, 24-hour professional on-site supervision required, licensed when otherwise required by local, state, or federal law, 24-hour professional security, establish curfews, enforce policies requiring abstinence from alcohol and illegal drug use, regular drug and alcohol testing programs, and then also not located within 1,200 feet of a similar facility and not located within 500 feet of a single-family zoning district. These are state requirements. If the city wanted to modify these requirements, they can reduce these numbers and allow more flexibility. We could not increase those numbers and make it more strict for those numbers. So those numbers are locked in by the state. Finally, congregate meal facilities. This is a facility that provides scheduled meals on a daily basis for families or individuals. The term does not include homeless shelters or transitional housing. The following condition applies. It is a federally funded or regulated Older American Act program managed by the Council on Aging, including congregate dining and Meals on Wheels programs. It's operated in a federally funded facility, and it's not located within 500 feet of a similar facility. I wanted to put something together to help you understand some of the maps that we did give you. I've given you an overlay of the North Ridgewood area. Wanted to strip that strip that down for you so you see that you have the all-white area and then you have your boundary surrounded by the blue. This is when we overlay the zoning on there, that's what we're going to have. We have our different zonings for the North Ridgewood overlay area. Then what we did, we took the green zoning and identified all of the green as residential. So we wanted to see where all of the residential zoning was located. The areas that you see in black on the bottom, those are zoning where a particular use would not be permitted in this area. So if it was a substance abuse and that area was black, they wouldn't be allowed to go there. They'd have to go to an area that was a white area, meaning that was a free location. Next thing we did, there's a number of conditions that have residential buffers. So what we wanted to do is take the residential buffers from the existing residential that we have over there. We've hatched them out in green, and you see they've kind of closed in a little bit, and it started to limit the amount of area that perhaps some of these uses could be going into. After we did that, one of the things we wanted to say was, okay, well, what do we have up there? What are the uses? We identified the uses. They're shown in the yellow, and I think we got one up there. So we know where they're located then. With that, we take the residential buffer for each of these uses. We add it on. It's in this case, I believe, a 250-foot buffer added on, so you can see that line. They can't come within 250 feet of residential. So if we see residential on there and it's touching that area, it would not be permitted. And then finally, what we did, because there are proximities to one another, in this one it's either 500 feet or maybe even 1,000 feet. You can take a look if any of these uses are within 500 or 1,000 feet of the next use, they wouldn't be permitted to move to that area, provided that this wasn't gone. If these uses stay, this is the way it would be kind of locked in place until maybe a use vacated. Excuse me. Okay. Proposed conditional use approval. One of the things that we wanted to look at is who was going to be doing the approval of a proposed conditional use. Staff is recommending that a conditional use application for the North Ridgewood area come to the planning board for review and approval to be required prior to a conditional use approval. Now, this is very similar to what's done in the redevelopment areas. In the redevelopment areas, if there is a conditional use, all conditional uses go to the redevelopment board for that area for approval. The process is the board will review what the criteria is. The applicant will make his case that he's met all of those requirements, and either there'd be approval or a denial at that point. One of the interests that had come up over time was the grandfathering of legal nonconforming uses. Staff, and this is very similar to what we've done and has been approved in the redevelopment areas. Staff is recommending an administrative program to identify existing social service agencies. These agencies would be required to notify the city of their location and specific use. The city will establish a time frame to allow the agencies to comply. 90 days is what we use for the redevelopment areas, and I would anticipate 90 days would be an appropriate time for the North Ridgewood area. Those that fail to comply or identify themselves may not be considered legal nonconforming uses and may not be grandfathered in. Legal nonconforming uses have the opportunity to become conforming by meeting the requirements of the Land Development Code and the conditional use schedule. So we had four major issues that we were looking at as we were going through these. They were as a summary, we had our prohibited uses, which were modified slightly. We have our conditional uses, which we added from the previous recommendation. The planning board review of the conditional uses, which was also added as we added the conditional uses. And then the identification program, which we introduced to the board a couple of months ago and has been approved in the redevelopment area. As for the recommendation, staff is recommending approval of the amendment request. The item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the City Commission for first reading on August 5th, 2011 at a public hearing, and second reading on October 19th, also at a public hearing. And again, an affirmative vote of 6 by the Planning Board shall be required to recommend approval to the City Commission. And that concludes staff's presentation at this time.
Okay. Now, you did cover both A and B in that. And of course,
A and
A
B.
is permission for the overlay for North Ridgewood.
Defining the area.
And B then are the specifications that you just covered. Are there any questions
Yes.
of staff?
Bob does.
One there, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll wait. Your hand was quicker than mine.
Oh, yeah, actually, I'm looking at the conditional uses. Are there any of those uses in the area now?
Of the conditional uses?
Yes, all of them?
Are we referring to the 12 that maybe you saw on that one list?
No, I'm looking at the 5 areas that you put under conditional use now. Are there any of those in that area now?
Yes.
Or are all of them in there now?
The conditional uses, let me back up here. I've got maps that I've presented to you. They're in the attachment C, and they'll show the area and they'll show the actual conditional uses that would go into that area. In the North Ridgewood area for food pantries, we do show the Homeless Assistance Center, and then we show the Salvation Army, which is just outside of the North Ridgewood area, but it does affect it with the proximity requirements. Substance abuse in the rehab centers, we do show 3 uses which are currently up there: Haven Recovery, First Step, and outpatient alcohol substance abuse treatment. Those are shown up there. For the abuse prevention, we currently show no abuse prevention in this area, so none are on the map. The community facilities, we've got 3 of them that we're showing on the map. 2 of them are actually inside the North Ridgewood area, Haven Recovery, Central Baptist Church, and then there's Stuart Marchman Treatment Center, which is just outside and located in the downtown redevelopment area. And then finally, the congregate meal facility, which does not have any facilities in that North Ridgewood area. So Of the prohibited uses, we're looking really at 1, 2,
You have 3 in there now and 2 not?
3, 4, 5,
Oh.
altogether 6, it would look like, that we have identified here. And again, we're in the process of collecting data from, that we've had from United Way, which was a great list and a great way to get us started. But now we're also going to start combining with our own personal data that we have with our permits and licensing, and some data that some of the services that don't work with United Way and aren't registered with United Way. So we're getting in there, we're trying to find all of these, and so these numbers are getting a little fluid as we start going through these.
Dennis, also, some of these are the same, like Haven Recovery is on a couple of different maps, so because there's 6 circles doesn't mean there's 6 different ones.
Well, actually, they're different types of recovery services. Yeah, there are like 3 different havens, but they do different things.
And
Let me
we've had multiple of the same name, multiple in different locations, and
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that. Now, had we not done what we're going to think about doing tonight, these would not be allowed in those areas?
had you
that where we
gone
are
with
now?
have you gone with a prohibited
Yes.
and said we're just going to take a prohibited of all of these uses and we're going to put that in the North Ridgewood area.
Right.
This map with the proximities wouldn't really do you much good because those uses would be prohibited. Now,
Would they be grandfathered?
they would be grandfathered in, provided that they were legal nonconforming uses, and they were able to identify themselves as legal nonconforming uses.
All right, and then, so it means of these that we're putting in 2 that are not in there now. Because you said there were 2 categories, we do not have any of those
That
in
is
that area
correct.
at this point.
That is correct. There are two categories that are not in this area.
So we've
and-
broadened it out and put some in there that weren't there before?
Well, and I think what we have to do when we look at that is maybe take a look at the conditions that are associated with those particular type. If you take a look at the congregate meal facility, which doesn't have a presence in the North Ridgewood area, let me pull that up. The conditions that are associated with it. Let's see if they're. I'll tell you what the requirements would be to move into the area. It would be a facility that provides scheduled meals on a daily basis for families, individuals. Term does not include homeless shelters or transitional housing, and that's really important because it's not something that would morph into something else. It has to be in a federally funded or regulated Older Americans Act program managed by the Council on Aging, including congregate dining and Meals on Wheels programs. And it also has to be operating in a federally funded facility. And again, it can't be located within 500 feet of a similar facility, which in this case wouldn't be a problem because there's none up there at this time. We'd also take a look at, does the current zoning allow that particular type of use? It's more than just there's space over there, and can they go in there? Well, they won't be able to go in there if the zoning doesn't allow it to go in there. A medical office can't go into a residential location just by the zoning. So
Now, why did you think you had to broaden it out more? Why do we have to broaden it out more and bring in those 2 categories that are not in there now?
Well, we have those categories currently listed in as prohibited uses in the redevelopment areas,
Right.
and we had them there. And the concern was something should probably be done to the North Ridgewood area, and if it's not going to be the prohibited use, maybe the conditional uses would better suit that particular area.
Right, now, why wouldn't you want it to be a prohibited use?
As we started going through some of the research material that we had put together, we had a difficult time collecting all of the information that we wanted and building the case that we wanted to get to in order to say, let's just move forward with prohibited uses in all these areas. I think with the information that we were able to put together, that we were able to assemble and take a look at to this point, that was the best information we could have in order to move forward without the prohibited uses. The conditional uses we felt a little bit more comfortable with, the prohibited uses, maybe not as comfortable with the information that we had.
So you mean not comfortable because illegal, or not comfortable because what?
The criteria for rezoning would require facts to show why that use should be prohibited.
Well, that's interesting, because, I mean, we seem to have done it with others, but I guess you were comfortable with the other ones that we left out completely?
Yeah, in CRA, I think we have the legal authority based on the purpose and intent of what the CRAs are. There were blight studies done. There's the direct goals of the CRA are to increase jobs, have development.
But you
and
can't do that in a...
We don't
in an
have that. We
overview.
don't have.
Over.
We don't have that in this area.
Okay.
Tracy?
Could you do that with more time? Because you also mentioned that there was information you did not get back. The deployment of police resources for that, we don't have any information on that, on what it took to bring crime down. That area has been in the police hot zone, the top 10 hot zones, and it's always 1, 2, or 3 since I have been a commissioner. It hasn't changed, even with a decrease. The property appraiser, you mentioned that. You didn't get information back on that. It's interesting. I don't know where you guys did get your information, but I think your map is skewed from what Morgan Gilreath would say. There's been a 54% drop in values in
The
Volusia
values
County.
came from their office.
These values did? Well, actually, they have them back down at 2001, which that doesn't show. So there's a problem. There's some problem with that there. And I'm curious. Also, you said we don't know all the facilities that are there, because I know some that are missing that like DOC, right? 562 North Ridgewood. That's not there. There are a number of other facilities that are in that area. So we really don't have the wide range of actually how many social service facilities we might actually have there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. A couple of other questions, though, because that's just the missing information. With the conditional use, if this is a conditional use and you're doing it based on how it's done in the redevelopment areas, those include a site plan approval along with the conditional use. Is that being proposed here?
I would recommend that it's proposed here also. Correct.
Okay. Site plan, the homeless services, whatever, 340 North, they have 94 beds, but their special use permit allows how many? Up to how many in that whole?
I want to say 240, perhaps.
Okay.
For the area, somewhere around there.
All right, and that's sort of in the heart of this right here. So they could actually increase from what they are already in this area.
And I'm not sure exactly how many they're using at this time.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to do an inspection or go out there and take a look at it or had any indications as to how many beds.
Okay,
were being
and I would
used.
imagine the same thing with the intensity of use at the Salvation Army. Do we know anything about Ballou Road?
I don't.
No, but they're in the 90-day period where they would need to come fill out the application to be considered grandfather legal non-conforming use.
Correct.
Okay, and to do that, to be grandfathered, what did they, as a legal, what do they actually have to meet? If we don't know anything about them, do we have any kind of criteria that they would have to actually meet that we would know about
There
them?
could be any number of reasons why they would be legal non-conforming uses. They could have been there prior to the prohibition going in.
Okay.
They could be there for whatever reason, and only after they identify themselves, we would go in and take a look at that.
Okay, and then find out, what you're saying then is we'd see that if what they're saying matches what they're doing.
Yes.
Okay,
And we'd have a benchmark then.
okay. I do have another question on the police. Did you have any conversation? I pulled out the Catholic Charities information that when that was all being done, and there's a huge discrepancy in the Chart 2 arrest that we were given over these years for tonight and what was given to the planning board for Catholic Charities. And just one thing
What was
to
the source of that information from
the
Catholic
police
Charities?
department.
police department's number?
Yeah, the Edith Janes, Comstat analyst, the same one who...
Okay, Edith was the one that provided these.
Okay.
questions.
No, it was the police department. I just, Catholic Charities information showed, like, for instance, let's pick 2008. If we look at our chart that we have tonight, police information, and we look at arrests by year, it looks like we're just over 1,350. In 2000, and let's see, 133 incidents. I don't know what they mean by incidents, if they mean calls or incidents. But actually, for Catholic Charities, they supplied the information that there were, for 2008, and this is just at the Homeless Coalition shelter, that whole STAR facility, everything that's there. There were 3,715 arrests and 692 police calls. So, and there's a number of years in the information we have that are different from what was done in 2009. Was there anything that, and the discrepancies are huge, which would paint a very different picture. Is
Well,
there?
we need to make sure you're talking apples to apples, so we'll
Well, arrest by year, arrest by
and
year.
maybe their annual figures now are defined differently than they were 2 years ago.
Well, that's what I'm saying, so we don't have the full pic, because there seems to be a big discrepancy here.
We'll take both of those numbers from them and say they're different. Why? What's the answer is there an answer?
And one last question, would staff, especially listening to Mr. Hoitzman too, would staff have any problem with actually continuing this for maybe another 60 days to get this? I mean, I think this information is critical to how we might decide this for this area. Would they have any problem with that?
I'd like to be able to have as much information as I can put together for the planning board to make a decision, a logical decision based on everything we can get. If there's other information out there that we could have that could assist, I say 60 days, I think, would help us put that information
I
together.
think the only thing on the list that we don't have, that we won't have even in 60 days, is the census stuff. I mean, that's probably...
Is the what?
The census.
Right,
The other
that I
stuff, I
realize.
think we'll probably be able to pull together the rest of that.
Property values you feel you would...
Yeah.
We
I think it's-
And I
Right.
think
Yeah.
also, just for our being on a better legal, a sound legal standing, since this is not a redevelopment area, so, I mean, I don't know where the board wants to go or what we want to hear tonight, but I would be interested in just making a motion to continue unless y'all decide you want to hear from whoever's here.
Well, I was probably going to suggest that after we heard from people and to make sure that I had all the information.
Okay.
I agree with you. Also, the population factor, and there too concerns me with it all being at one
One
place, so
place.
to speak, which really is one way of looking at it, that you really had a major decrease of 264 people in
Mm-hmm.
during that period of time, not 20. And so all three parameters, as far as I'm concerned with what we're presented, is a problem. I guess my question now, since we have people that's showing up, do we need to hear to get concerns or positive feedback at this time?
Mr. Chairman, is there any, all the information about the types of services allowed in the area? We're really, I thought we should have made more separation between 4A and 4B.
I agree.
Because it is possible that we approve of the overlay for the area, because all the discussion and question seems to be about what we do.
Right.
I think as a board, we probably all agree that the area should have an overlay, and the overlay, the requirements in the overlay will benefit the residential parts of the neighborhood, actually. So I think the board can be in favor of the overlay,
Well,
and then work out the details of the uses in the overlay.
what you would end up having is an overlay with no restrictions or nothing associated with it. It would be your boundary and your overlay, and then all the text and everything would be coming after that.
But is there any reason that we would do it for protection during the period that
There's
Well,
just no benefit to
There's
it,
no
because
benefit
even
to
if
doing
you
that, okay.
designate it and there's no criteria for it, you might as well just not have it and do them at
But
the
as
same
long as
time.
it's an agenda item,
Right.
it's a moratorium anyway.
It's still
Right.
moratorium.
It's
Okay.
not a moratorium.
That was my concern on it.
Okay.
It's not a moratorium, explain that.
It's pending legislation, so it's effectively like a moratorium,
Right.
but it's not. So anyone trying to get a permit to go in that area right now has to wait until this is resolved.
So a continuation protects the residents.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Do we want to listen? Do we want to hear from residents who've shown up?
Sure,
Or not
for
tonight?
being here.
Sure.
There are several
Thank you.
that are here. I think maybe we ought to have a debate if everyone agrees, a 3-minute clock, if we could. First off is Chris Don, and on deck is Donnie Anderson.
Do you have the?
Hi, I'm Chris Dawn. I'm representing the Uptown Daytona Neighborhood Association. I'm going to be as brief as I can. My first question, and before I proceed, I need clarification before I can continue speaking, but I have on Part A, which is the designation of the new district or overlay, I noticed that in the backup, there is a zoning map that's included. The zoning map is included in both Part A and Part B. It's on Part A, the reason I'm talking on that issue now is it's listed as Attachment C as the zoning map. And then in Section B, it's listed second to the last page of packet backup B, 4B. So that caused me some confusion of why it was put in both packets. So my question is, I guess would be a legal question. Is there a legal purpose for including the zoning map for the creation of the overlay in Part A?
It's just a reference. Even with the overlay, your underlying zoning remains. The overlay classification just adds additional restrictions to what you can do underneath. So this zoning will remain in effect, and that's why the map's in there.
And then what if the zoning was changed? Would that be addressed in Part B?
We would give out a revised zoning map if the zoning map were changed. That's the current
As part
zoning.
of the creation of the overlay?
I'm not sure I.
This map doesn't change. It's
Right.
just kind of on top of this, it's going to have, what are we going to call it, the North Ridgewood overlay.
Is that a legal requirement by the state or to create a new overlay that you put a zoning map in with that, is my question to you? Meaning you already have the map of the boundaries of the new proposed overlay as Part A.
Okay.
Is there other type of statute or legal requirement to include the zoning map with it as part of the creation of Part A? Part A is the creation of the new overlay, correct? So
It's-
my question is there a legal requirement to include the zoning map with that?
You have to, it's for informational purposes. I mean, we could just adopt this overlay and show the boundaries.
So it's not a requirement by the state statute or law to create an
The
overlay?
overlay is something we do through the Land Development Code.
Okay.
So we're not submitting it to the state.
Okay. And then I think it should be removed as part of Part A to the commission since it's included in Part B for the actual overlay. That was a technical point, but I thought that zoning map, because it's included as part of the creation of the overlay, would cement that zoning as part of the creation, and since it's not required, I think it's redundant information. So that was my first comment.
All right, you have about 2.5 minutes to go.
Okay.
Because I know you were asking questions.
Yeah, so, well, I took up my 3 minutes asking a single question. June 23rd meeting, I came and spoke on record, and Ms. Washington, you as the secretary, I asked that you would ensure that staff would include especially certain things that I don't even see are a part of the record or of the packet, that this board could discuss. Now, I understood the length of the list, but after 3 years of meetings with staff, I'd like to say on the record that even though they've met with the neighborhoods twice, none of the requests that we had put in for this overlay is included in your packet at all. So that's why we came back and asked, everything that we asked for at the June 23rd meeting was discussed at some point with staff. So it's just that was ignored. Specifically, I want to go just on the record that it seems to me that what you're receiving tonight for this overlay has bent over backwards, accommodating requests from the social service agencies to add conditional uses rather than what the commission specifically stated on record directing staff. Because the way I attended that meeting for the social services workshop with the city commission, staff even said that their plan was to simultaneously bring forward the redevelopment ordinance with the Ridgewood overlay, and that what they would do is take what was in the redevelopment area text and just bring it forward for the Ridgewood overlay, and maybe we would just tweak it a little bit. And that's kind of how I saw that happening. But now we're even having changes to definitions here, where in one on your map for, I'm getting into Part B now, for the congregate meal facilities, staff has now changed the definition that they've stated on record tonight. There are no congregate meal facilities in the North Ridgewood overlay because somehow they're being counted as a homeless shelter. So the soup kitchen on North Street, which is one of the most high-impact social service agencies in my neighborhood, somehow is not considered on record as being a congregate meal facility, and neither is the Salvation Army, which is also in my neighborhood, isn't even on the map. And the Salvation Army is also a substance abuse facility for State of Florida Department of Corrections. They lease out, I believe, 140 of their beds for inmate drug rehab. Okay, I don't see that on your map. So these are some discrepancies I'm also seeing, as well as Ms. Remark. But these are serious issues, I think, that need to be addressed by this board. I'm very concerned about the definitions for the congregate meal facility, how they've been manipulated. I think you should go back to what the original text was that was passed for the redevelopment areas, bring that forward, including the prohibited uses. We also had in your backup at the very end of Part B, it includes the minutes of meetings on page 2.
Quickly.
I have another speaker who will relinquish their time to me, sir, if you need that.
All right. Who is that?
You want to call the next speaker? I have several.
Donnie Anderson.
Okay. If you can go to attachment A at the very end of Part B, it's almost, it says page 2. It's about 6 pages forward as the October 28th, 2010 North Ridgewood Overlay Community Meeting. recommended prohibiting the following types of businesses, and it lists gun shops, bail bond centers, pain management clinics, drive-through liquor and cigarettes, liquor stores, internet cafes. I don't see that in the proposed text of prohibited businesses that is part of the neighborhood request. So what I would like to do is to request a revisiting further prohibited businesses such as pawn shops, bail bondsmen, all medical offices, drive-through beverages, internet cafes. Our concern with check cashing stores is there's something called loan services, which is like a signature loan, basically loan services other than chartered banks or credit unions, which are to me like loan shark activities like title loans, signature loans, property loans, finance loans, household finance companies. We are concerned that that's not included with prohibited activity of a check cashing. The other one is gun or weapon shops and supplies, and that's it. The other part was we were concerned about the grandfathered prohibited businesses, social services. The biggest impact on the neighborhood is the loitering, and also that they don't provide a waiting area. So as part of the grandfathering for specific uses, we want to make sure that that's included as part of their being grandfathered in, that they provide a waiting area that does not conducive to loitering. We also discussed at the 23rd meeting the discussion of the Land Development Code, Article 1, Section 5, which is the non-conforming uses. That is one of the biggest impacts on our neighborhood because it includes non-conforming parcels, structures, and the 65% rule. We were hoping that because you were passing this overlay that could be addressed. And then the TPO study, I want to go on record. There was even a newspaper article in today's News Journal that talked about the study. All it is a they're taking all of the studies from different cities that have jurisdiction over US 1 and compiling it into one report. It does not provide for any other benefits other than a one-stop reference document. If you want to call another.
Hannah Byers.
It's ridiculous.
So this TPO study, or that is being done by the county transportation planning office, is basically not going to have any benefit or changes to my neighborhood, other than creating a reference document that will allow the TPO to apply for grants to make some improvements on transportation issues. And that was in today's News Journal. There was also discussion of that the commercial element is missing out of this, and I also think if you're going to postpone this, that also needs to be included as well. I wanted to read the quotes out of the News Journal that staff said that this overlay would do for us. Dennis says that it's a gateway into the city, a senior planner for the city. Our goal is to make this corridor economically viable. All right? And that was in the News Journal on June the 5th, 2011. In addition to prohibitions, the city can also set up new guidelines for things such as landscaping and building design for both businesses and homes that could force some landowners to fix up their properties, says Rich Walton, the city's planning director. The corridor hasn't been thriving like anyone would want, Walton says. Realtors say prospective buyers are turned off. Some residents feel unsafe. The area is not improving economically and aesthetically. I would like to know where in this overlay is there any text that addresses the economic benefits or the aesthetic benefits to this neighborhood? Because I don't see it. And the only way that I do see that happening is if we revisit the zoning map of what the neighborhood zoning is, just like this board did for Ridgewood Avenue in Old Daytona a couple of years ago. At the June 23rd meeting, we passed out a list of targeted businesses we'd like to see, and in most cases are not allowed. So this is an opportunity to deal with the economic viability issue that staff has said would be in this text and is not. And I know that you received this as a handout, but I would like your commitment and your assistance that could be included in part of this text so that we could get these businesses and the economic development for our city. Okay, lastly, we haven't discussed amateurization. I have one more.
John Anderson?
All right. The commission said that amateurization, and also in your packet, it's still on the table. And I think in certain cases would be appropriate for high impact social services to look at. I think that you should consider putting this in the text and allowing the city commission to decide what their pleasure would be on this issue, but you giving them the opportunity to discuss it publicly instead of you taking that off the table. It's not mandating that happens, but it's allowing the city commission to make that decision. And I think you should leave it on the table for them to discuss publicly. The other one that was not taken was the pilots, which is payment in lieu of taxes, or what's called municipal service fees, off of the table for grandfathering in social service agencies that have a high impact. And as Ms. Remark referred to police statistics, I do have public information that's been updated for 2009 and 2010. At the Homeless Coalition, in 2009, there were 1,821 arrests, 448 calls just to 340 North Street. In 2010, there were 168 calls and 1,487 arrests, and that would be from clients using that address as their address when they're booked or processed for an arrest. So, concluding with that, in 2009, 2008, 20% of all arrests in our city were made from people using social service agencies addresses. 2009, 16%, and 2010, it was 14%. Who is paying for all of that when they are tax-exempt properties? And that's the other reason, if we want our city to be economically viable in the future, we need to look at what it's costing us in order to attract new businesses, new jobs, and new residents to our city. And that's something you can help with in our city. And that's all I have. Thanks.
No more speakers. Ouija, Condig.
I don't talk that long. Ouija Condig, 718 North Wild Olive. I'm speaking on behalf of Save Our Neighborhoods. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir tonight. I was hoping not to have to address this issue of conditional uses ever again for the Ridgewood area. I am very surprised that after all these years, you don't have the information you need to make a decision tonight. For the past few years, you, the commission, and the residents have stated very clearly that we don't want conditional uses here or in the surrounding CRAs. What possible good would it do to have prohibited uses in the CRAs surrounding Ridgewood and then permitting Ridgewood to have these conditional uses? Everything that would be put in place in the CRAs to improve them would be useless if Ridgewood is not also improved. You would be undermining everything you're trying to achieve in the CRAs. Ridgewood is a major gateway to our city. Bill France recognized that. This roadway is important to our city as any other major gateway and deserves to be treated as such. And what about the neighborhoods abutting Ridgewood? Don't they deserve respect from the city? These fragile neighborhoods have been trying to improve themselves for years now, and they need some sort of mechanism to do that. About the only thing they have gotten is improved police protection because they have needed it. So I urge you tonight, as you have done before, to send along the Ridgewood overlay without conditional uses to the commission and to seriously consider finding a mechanism for the neighborhood to become economically viable and have back its rightful place in this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Michael Woods?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Michael Woods with the law firm Cobb Cole, 150 Magnolia Avenue. Here today on behalf of the Volusia Flagler Coalition for the Homeless. Just want to clarify a few points regarding our operations of our facilities, because it seems to be probably what was the impetus for a lot of this discussion. And I noticed Mr. Doan referenced the fact that the overlay district focuses predominantly on what you can't do rather than providing the economic incentives. And I think the reason that is for now, and doesn't mean you can't get to it later on, is to try to hem in or to stem the tide, to say this and no further in the neighborhood as far as social services are concerned. And I understand that, but I also want to clarify the means by which the Homeless Assistance Center operates. We operate under our semi-public use permit. It was originally adopted in 2002 and then was amended in 2005, which is probably the first time I met some of you appearing here in Daytona Beach. And I want to clarify that even with the adoption of the overlay, even with the adoption of prohibitions, and there's express prohibitions in the overlay, no homeless shelters and the like, the semi-public use permit operates outside of that. So, and we're not talking about just being grandfathered, as a use that is permitted under straight zoning would be grandfathered in, and then if a hurricane came through and there's the thresholds and all that. Under the semi-public use permit, we never become a legal non-conforming use. We remain a legal use. So in the instance of a hurricane coming in, washing us out, or what have you, we still maintain the right to continued operations. That's not to say anything other than to make sure it's very clear in its understanding that what you're adopting here won't do away with what's already there. It's controlled by the document as adopted in 2005, and it exists beyond the overlay. But what you would do is prevent that from expanding beyond those dimensions or having other services come in and do similar things. We just thought that it was important to clarify that on the record, and if that was not the understanding of the city, or if there was some intent either by the city or at the planning board or commission level to somehow start a clock on grandfathering or to amortize the use at the homeless assistance facility, to clarify that now rather than when we're at the 11th hour and having one of those city commission hearings that go till 1, 2, or 3 o'clock in the morning. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but otherwise I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I have one question. If you don't follow your semi-public use permit,
We have to be held to the semi-public use permit. The uses that are
if
established
you
in there,
don't
and if the uses are
follow-
not in there,
Right.
then those uses cannot continue to be permitted.
okay, can those uses actually cause you to lose your semi-public use permit if you have legally?
I do not believe so, because there's a severability clause in there. I understand the point that's being raised, and I know that there's been conversations during the workshops, and I've not attended them, that are the uses extending beyond the semi-public use permit. To the extent that there are uses that are doing that, then there's no right to those uses continuing on, and there would be an enforcement matter. But that would not, in itself, kill the semi-public use permit as it's currently drafted. That's a pretty heavy-duty document if you really look into it. But
Any other questions? All right. Mr. James Newman?
Carrie, do you have it? Okay.
Hi, I'm James Newman, 535 Mulberry Street. Mulberry Street is just, well, pretty much in the center of the proposed Ridgewood overlay. And I just want to say that all the statistics that are being thrown around don't really mean that much to me because I live every day with the fallout from the concentration of social services in my neighborhood. The conditional uses, the conditions to me seem ludicrous. 500 feet is one on every block. Not allowing people to stay on the premises just allows them to filter back into the neighborhoods, to break into my garage and sleep in it or urinate in my front yard, and the number of things that go on. It's like a horror movie sometimes, looking out my front yard. I live in a nice little house. It's a pretty little neighborhood. We have nice old trees and older homes, and when I moved in, I thought it was a beautiful place, and I still think it's beautiful visually. It's the problems, again, that are exacerbated by this concentration of services in the neighborhood. So I would just like to ask you to not consider conditional uses at all. They need to be eliminated from this proposal. And I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Mr. John Nicholson.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grand River Avenue. When you looked at your map, they had a map up there with the green residential area. It had about 50 homes in it. The area that was not included in the residential area had about 150 single-family homes. So I understand there were 4 little items, and they did the 250-foot, protected some more homes, 1,000-foot, protected some more homes. But in essence, I don't understand why a majority of the homes, especially it's Mulberry to Ridgewood, where most of the homes are. If you go Mulberry to Beach Street, you've got a vacant lot, a huge vacant lot. You've got the church. You've got 3 trailer locations. You've got large businesses. So most of the homes are between Mulberry and Ridgewood, and that's the area that is really the area that you really want to protect. All right, and it doesn't appear in what you're doing is protecting that area. The second thing is, it says there are 271 social services. I've asked staff to identify what those are so that you absolutely know what you're talking about, and the staff hasn't done it. Are you talking about pre-K? There's a pre-K facility on Ridgewood. Is that what you're worried about? I know the last time when I went down to the downtown CRA had 3 facilities that they were worried about. One was the Children's Services on Beach Street. The other was Legal Aid on Orange Avenue, and the third one was the Catholic Church. Those were the only ones in the downtown CRA. I could have listed 5 more, okay? And Hum would be one of them right there at the very top, and it wasn't listed. This area, you're naming 4, and I'm sure there are many more. So I would ask that you understand exactly which ones they are and where they're located. If staff could give you that, you would have a better idea of what you're talking about. Are you going to mail notices to the 271 businesses? It's not fair to sit there and say, well, it's been in the newspaper, they should come in and tell us. If they don't, then they're not grandfathered in. If you mail notices to them, and I hope you do, that way they know that they should come in and say something to you. Otherwise, it doesn't always come across. And lastly, on your crime, what exactly is your 3,000 arrests? Is it on North Street, or is it anybody who is using that address? And I'm presuming it's anybody who has used that address, because there are a lot of arrests from people that use that address over on Beachside. So clarify that, because Tracy's talking about, well, the numbers don't jive. So you all, I mean, it's bad enough, trust me. That many people being arrested using that address is bad for the city as a whole, not just for the overlay. Thank you.
That's a lot, John.
Thank you. That's enough. Huh?
Can I please
Okay.
say something? I gave my time up. Can I
No.
please say something?
No, I'm sorry. You've had your chance. I'm sorry. Board?
Let me address a couple of things that were raised. Based on the information that we had collected, we recommended what we did tonight based on that information. I don't know that after we collect more information, our document may change. That was one of the things Mr. Doan talked about, this document changed. I suspect this definitions and details will change all the way up to adoption. That's a pretty common occurrence. The other thing that staff focused on to move this forward and get this to you is the social service aspect only. The social service is primarily the uses that were clearly identified inside the CRA, and there was a concern that they could move across the line, and so we've identified that. I don't know what Chris is knowledgeable of with the Transportation Planning Organization. I've been to most of the meetings. His comments are totally off base, not accurate. In fact, they are in the final stages of selecting a consultant. There is a task force that is going to sit with the consultant to finalize their pick that consultant. The first item on their scope, once they're selected, is to meet with stakeholders, the city commission in particular, city staff, and we are going to talk about what exactly they're going to do and what exactly they're not. We have already committed to the MPO that if the consultant, and Ormond Beach, I can tell you, feels the same way. If the money and the scope that they end up finalizing with the Transportation Planning Organization does not go far enough into land use and controls on that, the city will supplement that, and the city will probably use that same consultant, and while they're out there, have them address both things. It'll be much cheaper to do that at the same time, so the city has committed to doing that. And all of the initial monies are being paid for by the Transportation Planning Organization. So we think we'll try to get as much as we can out of that and then go further for where we need to supplement that. But the meeting established and their exact scope hasn't even been established. There's a meeting, I think it's next week is the next meeting on that. It's a selection committee meeting, and then they'll award the contract, and then we'll be able to sit with them directly and find out what they're doing. And a lot of the things, the facts, the information that were discussed relative to the CRA, this isn't the CRA. There's a whole legal different issue outside of the CRA. And yes, the City Commission felt that because in the CRA those were prohibited uses, it should remain that way. I think we made a lot of progress. Staff learned a lot. I think the city learned a lot working with United Way and the agencies. And some of these items that even Chris mentioned about having waiting inside of these facilities and not outside are advantages and maybe of benefit. But until we have all the information, I don't know that we could do that. I certainly don't think you're going to create economic development by taking certain businesses that are certain retail business and say these aren't allowed, but these other retail businesses are. So I know there are some fundamental differences on some of the things that have been suggested that we don't agree with, but wanted to point out that we've brought this forward to specifically advance the social service use in this area, which is going to be we believe the most affected by the ordinance that we just passed within the redevelopment area. So I would suggest we finish that first. We can certainly take on any other special neighborhood districts and all the other items that have been thrown out there on a case-by-case basis, but each one of those have all different kind of ramifications and think need to be thought through at the proper level. The neighborhood district that was asked for a couple times actually has to start with the City Commission. There's some legislative requirements for that, and the City Commission would have to initiate that. I'm not sure if there's any other items that were raised you want me to address. I will, but other than that, I know you wanted to hear from the public. This was an advertised hearing tonight, but maybe get some direction before we move forward.
Right. Well, obviously, the City Commission did task us with that, the staff and in fact, the planning board, with the, because of just what you said, what happened to the CRAs in this particular area is surrounded by 3 CRAs plus a city on the other side. and they were afraid of the overflow coming in there. Already, as pointed out in North Ridgewood overlay, they have 12 that are identified, and the largest CRA area has 13. So they're actually tied with the largest area. So it is very critical. We're hearing that from residents. I think what Tracy pointed out is very appropriate because of the fact that three key ingredients that we're looking at, we really don't have the information on.
Don't have all of it, correct.
And I'm just curious how much time do you think it would take? I was thinking one more month, but I heard Dennis mention 60 days, and I understand you're also working on something else citywide that may dovetail with this, and that would be ideal to be able to bring those together at once if we could.
Yeah, I think just procedurally, a 30-day postponement really only gives us about 2 weeks before we got to...
Especially because we have Clarion Module 2 in there, so I was thinking...
We absolutely have a few things besides this going on, but I would suggest if we're going to postpone it, we get at least 60 days to do that.
At least, would you rather have, not? I mean, would you rather have, you're saying at least? Because I'd like the next time for it to come back, for us to be able to actually put it to bed. So
Staff would
Yeah, so-
love to put this to bed at the next meeting. we have.
60 or 90, because you guys are the ones doing the work.
Well, we're going to be spending a lot of time between now and the end of the month. Tentatively, that Clarion's next trip here is tentatively the end of September.
Right.
I believe it's going to be the last Monday and Tuesday. That's still got to get firmed up.
Would
So-
November be, because then that means that you really have only 2 weeks in October before you're putting it together. So would November be better?
Yes.
Okay.
November's earlier, too.
Okay. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
No,
so we
motion
got
to
up a month.
continue, North Ridgewood overlay area, A, rezoning, B, land development text amendment, to November 2012 planning board meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Hold on a second. I think she said... You say 2012?
Oh, I'm sorry, 2011.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you. Oh, my gosh, thank you. 2011, I meant 11.
It's been long enough already.
Yeah, I didn't want to go that long. Yeah, that'd be plenty of time. So, did we vote?
Got a motion and a second.
I have a motion to second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
God, where'd 12 come from?
Item, excuse me. Before we move on, I'm going to request, if we're going to do both A and B, whatever it comes back, if it's going to be done as one, then it's not separated.
The vote would have to be
Vote
separate.
separately.
The vote would have to be separate. There are two separate actions that would need two separate votes. We just discussed them as one because the facts are really kind of supporting both, but
Because we're actually voting on a rezoning and a text amendment.
I understand that.
Okay.
I'm asking that when it's brought back before us, that it's done separately. If you'd had other individuals in here, the way it was gone through tonight, they would have been a little confused.
We'll bring
And
it
I
back.
would rather, for clarity,
sure.
that we do A and then B. A for A, and then we discuss it, and B, and then discuss it.
Good point.
Because it will cause quite a bit of confusion. Yeah. Thank you. All right, item number 5. Semi-public use request, Museum of Arts and Sciences, DEV 2011-039.
Okay, the applicant has requested to withdraw the request. Mr. Walton, would you like to address that?
No, I'm sure you've seen some of this in the newspaper, and you heard some of it that when we tried to hear this before, the issues aren't worked out. They felt it was best to withdraw it and come back if they get those issues resolved.
Okay.
So we don't vote, right?
Since we have no new business, we'll move on with the other business. Downtown Blue Road redevelopment.
We have the, we have the one
Discussion,
item.
comp plan.
Discussion.
Sorry, I'm-
Comp
Oh.
plan.
Top of that page.
Yeah.
Number
okay, I'm
6.
sorry, number 6.
Item number 6, discussion of comprehensive plan amendments related to the entertainment zone, East Zone.
Good evening, Tom Whitenauer, Planning Division. You're not being asked to take action on this item tonight. We wanted to get the E-zone plan to you so you could start reviewing it before your next meeting on the 22nd, where we will bring to you proposed amendments to the comprehensive plan. Really needing no introduction, the E-zone plan's been in the works for over 2 years. Reed Berger, the Division Director of Redevelopment, is here, who worked with the division, the community commissioners, probably several of you had input. What the planning division's asked to do is simply prepare amendments to implement the E-zone plan. We're one of, the plan is one of 3 documents to amend to implement the plan. The other is the land development code, and the third is the redevelopment plan. Surprisingly, it's going to take very little, we think, to add some text changes to the plan. So what you'll receive next month, or for your next meeting in September, is going to be less volume. You know, the E-zone plan is complete. It's binded. It's finished. We're not going to be dipping back into that to make any amendments. We're just going to give you what amendments are necessary, really, for the Department of Community Affairs to approve the plan. We're going to attach it as a document for data analysis, and only amend in policy changes that we need to. The reason we wanted to come tonight and give you the head start is we've scheduled out the time frame to amend these 3 documents, and with so many advisory boards and the city commission, trying to overlap as much as possible, actually, to have this available for investment developers and property owners to start employing. The concept of this, which will run by the Department of Community Affairs and also you, is that it's to be an overlay. You've been talking about the Ridgewood overlay. This one would be the E-zone future land use overlay zone, where they have more flexible land uses, but the balance is they have higher aesthetic regulations, and the balance is to streamline the process. We're told from the ACOM, who are the lead principals on this study, that national developers, they are used to seeing higher standards than we have, but they want to know that the time frame, which time is money, to get in, understand the area, and develop is one thing of many things that they consider. So this is to enable that process. If it's property owners or other developers that come in that want to follow the existing land uses and regulations and procedures, they're welcome to stay with that existing current future land use. So I've been aware of other places that have done this successfully, and I'm glad to see the city of Daytona Beach using this. I think that covers everything I wanted to cover. We hope to get to the Department of Community Affairs, either visit them or send them the E-zone and some text amendments perhaps before your September 22nd meeting. So we'll have an idea of how they will react. I have a few slides to quickly go through of what I've learned in the E-zone. There's a lot of substance in the E-zone, many of which the planning department won't ever have any role in, or even the planning board. It considers event planning. There's so many areas, really land use and development. Building form are just a few of the facets that it covers. The E-zone area, the spine of it, you might say, is Main Street, but it extends up just past the Ocean Center, and the current future land use designations are all redevelopment type of designations, subject to review by the redevelopment department or redevelopment board that Mr. Berger runs, the different boards. This is one cut sheet of a couple I'll put in front of you here. This is the one section of the E-zone plan with 4 land uses. don't think this is really a foreign object. It sounds sort of exotic with the form-based code. You'll start to hear some more vocabulary throughout the next year or so, but it's very similar to the land development code you have now. It's just think of it more three-dimensionally. Instead of having what you're used to seeing, sort of a two-dimensional land use map, it starts to get into 3 dimensions, and I'll try to describe that really quickly. But in this map, it shows just the 2 dimensions. It describes it in more text. This is one of 7 area plans. In fact, I've zoomed in on one block of one area, so it's even smaller, because for myself, I needed to understand what the plan is dictating, so we'll learn and know what to amend in the plan or make reference to. But it's got land uses, and then in the table to the left, it starts to describe the heights, the floor area ratios, the stacking of land uses. In some cases, they understand, and everyone seems to prefer retail on the first or second level, even though you might have a hotel use or office or mixed use. So it starts to describe and require what goes on in different levels. Almost like a set of Monopoly, a sort of plastic game pieces. It has a diagram of different types of building uses and a description of them. One of many is hotel lodging. It wouldn't look like this. This with the striping, all I've tried to do was show you the number of floors and the uses. The uses on the bottom would be red, indicating retail, pedestrian-oriented, a lot of transparency with making it attractive for pedestrians to walk up and down the street comfortably. And then the orange, with the color coding that they used, would be hotel lodging in this case. And so it starts to describe in 3 dimensions what they expect of developers when they're looking at this area for investment. And they're used to seeing this kind of thing. This is the overlay of the E-zone on the area. This is kind of an example of what your current future land use designation says, which will still be available, but it kind of just extrudes those colors up. Everything's retail in this case, 4 stories all the way along A1A and Main Street, and then floor area ratio is also used in our current land use designations for these redevelopment areas, which just means if it's got an FAR of 7, you can cover that building and go up 7. You can cover the parcel and go up 7 stories. You could cover half of it and go up 14. There's just different ways of doing it. But that as opposed to when you're looking at different land uses, this is that same block of A1A and Main Street, and going up, and you've got to be more considerate of the mix of land uses, the shape of it, the height of it. There'll also be architectural elements where they have to look at the sort of the skin of the building, balconies. It also gets into the public realm. Let me say that again. Instead of a public realm, where most of the time a city's paying for the design of landscaping benches, attractive signage, there's going to be a requirement that the private sector on their sites provide those things. So it starts to green up and transition better with the overall streetscape than just kind of coming down with the hard edge. Just to kind of conclude, and this is the handout I gave you because we knew this wouldn't appear too well on the slide. What we think we're going to get in the end, we're certain of, is actually having less density or intensity of development within the E-zone boundary that we have now. It'll be shifted around, whereas right now it's allowed to build up a certain amount throughout. This almost kind of lowers it on the exterior and raises it in the middle. If you could understand that what that means, so overall, we're spreading out, moving the density around, but we think we're going to have less because we're going to talk to the Department of Community Affairs and some others about the idea of transferring the entitlements that we haven't seen constructed and we doubt will ever be needed in some of the parcels like the city-owned park spaces, the Ocean Center, some parking decks, and even the garages, where there's remaining entitlements, but we could shift them over to other areas to use. I'm using my hand to go up. I don't mean to go vertically or say it'll be taller, but it'll just be more intense. That's concluding, what I think is necessary, a brief presentation. It's not going to be rewriting a big part of the code or the comprehensive plan. The work, a lot of the work has been done. There's going to be plenty of opportunity for your input as we review the land development code. Community will have plenty of input. One thing that the city commissioners wanted to see was when will the community have more input on the implementation part of the East Zone plan before everything is ready to go. And that's what that chart also shows in red. We identified with red boxes and red text the various times when the public still has opportunity. Even though they've had opportunity for the last 2 years, there's still more opportunity. I hope that gave you an example. That's just one block of a 7-block area. In fact, it was a half a block of a 7-block area of how the concept of this works. It took me a few weeks really to read the E-zone plan and boil it down to really there's about 7 pages in there of the 7 areas, and I highlighted a couple of those in there in the slides of what tools are in there that affect the building development in the area. If you have questions, it'd probably be more appropriate to either kind of list them and try to get back to you because we don't know it thoroughly. Reed may be able to address some questions. If you want to come in and speak with staff, we can.
One of the things we are looking for are big flags. If anybody's got any specific concerns, to tell us now, so we have 30 days to work through that and get back to you. But tonight, that was the purpose of that. The other one thing I want to mention relative to this chart, the City Commission has already voted conceptually to approve the E-zone plan. Most of them said they had there were things in the plan that some of the details they've got some issues with. Those are yet to be worked out. But they want to move as quickly as possible to get all of the steps beyond us so that when somebody comes to develop, they can move forward. We put together this chart as the optimum best case scenario of all the steps that are needed, how long that would take, and we couldn't be finished with this until May of 2012. They said that's too long. That's just how long it takes to do all these steps if we do them in a very expeditious manner. And so that's why when each of these meetings come up, we're going to need to tackle that, address any issues, and move on to the next one, because the City Commission at their last meeting are voted to approve contract for ACOM to actually be the drafter of the form-based LDC, which will come to you, and I'm sure we'll have quite a bit of discussion on, because that's really where the details will really come out, and how it all fits together, the process, which is a process we have never used before, the form-based. I think you'll like it. I think especially for a smaller area like this, it's much easier to predict up front what you're going to see, what you're going to have, what you want, and I think it'll work well for everyone. But that's all I really wanted to point out about the schedule, because there are a whole lot of moving parts. We're trying to move them all at the same time as much as possible. There's legal requirements in terms of we have to obviously amend our comprehensive plan before we can change and put in the overlay, but we're going to try to move with all of those at the speed that you see on this chart.
Quite aggressive.
Questions?
Yes.
Okay. Since we had actually every commissioner, I think, except Ms. Reynolds, who didn't comment since the rest of the commission had, since we had every commissioner and the mayor say that there are a lot of things in the plan they don't like. They like the concept, but there are things they don't like. It's a roadmap, not a blueprint. And I have heard at our redevelopment board meeting and now at this meeting that we're just attaching the plan. Why are we attaching a plan to DCA that we have items in the plan that the commission, and Commissioner White, I mean, she's got like 6 pages of...
Well, I've read through her comments, and I don't think any of those are inconsistent with their plan. There are details that have to be worked out, and the reason we would suggest attaching that is for data and information. Anytime you do a comprehensive plan amendment, you have to have data and information to back up what you're doing, rather than...
So you're just sending it doesn't mean, because I know that there are concerns
Correct.
about the authority, concerns
Absolutely.
about...
It'll
Okay.
speak more to the intensity, the way it's going to look, generally what's going on, and those things will really not come to fruition and really be at our forefront until we get to the form-based zoning code.
Okay.
But we want to make sure DCA sees the details of where we're going.
Okay. And then
That's the only reason.
Okay. And then I had one other question. Why is this being approached as an optional overlay to bring people up to this rather than just a straight rezoning for this area? I have been curious about that the whole time, actually.
We'll probably do the same thing with the zoning. We'll probably do that as an overlay, and the rationale is because we don't have eminent domain, we don't own these pieces of property, and once
Okay.
you entitle properties and you change the land use, and then you try to encourage them to come along, you've already changed that. There could be some Bert Harris right issues already.
So changes in land use, it basically what we'd be doing is making carrots.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Being no new business, we'll go on to our other business, now the downtown Blue Road redevelopment.
Excuse me, downtown Blue Road redevelopment area board met, I think it was August 2nd, here in the commission chambers, and we received reports on code enforcement, something from the police department. We talked, there were I think there were only 2 items. One item was the Rocco's, I want to say, the ice cream. They decided they wanted to do sidewalk cafe type thing. That was approved. The sidewalk was large enough that they could put chairs out and tables out that would not cause a problem. That was approved. We received an update on the approvals for ISB and the upgrading that was going to be done there, and then we received an update also on the marketplace.
Good. Midtown, Ms. Benjamin.
I'd like to apologize for being late, but I did attend a workshop downstairs from FAMU, Master Plan for Midtown.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
We apologize for scheduling our meeting. We had a little discussion with redevelopment about that today. We heard that meeting going on.
Okay. Midtown redevelopment met August 9th, and court enforcement report was given by Officer Lopez. And he did do something about Haynes Street and Orange Avenue. It lasted until the mobile home van moved away. They were there for 4 days, right in front of them and everything. And today you go by there, it's back like usual. Okay, then the following properties were boarded up: 517 McLeod Street, 633 Jefferson Street, and 213 Garden Street. And the two-story house on Lincoln was demolished. Okay, he's been working there for a long time. They finally got it straight. So it looks 100% better over there. Is that for me? DB 2011-001, Bethune-Cookman University. We did approve the Performing Arts parking lot to be enlarged. There was no static. And I think the other thing, the prohibit use. I know you're waiting, Tracy. Okay. Charles Bryant, the redevelopment manager. Well, we gave him assignment before we bring it back to you. And this is what they're going to do for us. The staff is continuing to gather information, conducting research in order to bring back a recommendation to the board to be presented at the September's meeting. And the parts of the research will be on with a map with all convenience stores, car washes in the Midtown redevelopment area, the size of each convenience store and car wash, a list of crime reported to the Daytona Beach Police Department, as it relates to these specific uses and location. Information from Volusia County Health Department regarding specific uses and location of those convenience stores, and code enforcement issue violation regarding these specific uses and locations. So we will be ready for you. Okay? And I think that's about it. Oh, we did have a young lady that came from the health department. They have a new program called PACE program, and they are working with Midtown. And one of the things I know that she said that they go and like look at the vegetables in the stores and the fruit and stuff. See about the nutrition.
What was the name of the program?
PACE.
Pace.
Just like the girls' school.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Main Street, South Atlantic, Ms. Remark.
Okay, we met August 10th. Our new chairperson is Dan Webster. Dave Lamont stays as the vice chair. And let's see, we had a conditional use temporary parking lot, the one on A1A, that was continued till the September 14th meeting. That's the one immediately south of the Hilton. Discussion on the E-zone master plan. I mean, it was a very, very, very basic discussion. We really didn't get into too much, but we'll continue that next month. Revision, we talked about revising our business incentive and grants program, especially given the downward trend in monies. We're Main Street South A1A. Just for information purposes, the South A1A portion of the redevelopment area that our board covers is now $10 million below the baseline of when it was established. There's no money there. And, of course, Main Street's being affected the same way. Actually, of course, everybody's being affected. So we talked about making some major changes to our grant programs, the commercial facade grant, to limit it to visible exterior improvements, and not roofs, and not AC, because that was eating up most of the money, and most of it was still like hurricane roofs. So it's like, deal with that. Do something that's going to actually upgrade the area. Limit the residential facade grant program to homesteaded, homeowner occupied, or homeowner properties, and those that are occupied to support that. Provide additional benefits to individuals willing to purchase existing residential rental properties and convert them back to single-family homes, to get rid of some of try and get rid of the over cut-up homes that really are a mess. And then focus the business incentive grants to attract new tourist-related businesses to the proposed E-zone, so to get very focused with that money in that area. And that was our meeting.
All right. It's time for public comments. Mr. Nicholson?
Two things on the E-zone. One, for years we've had a 10-foot setback on A1A, starting with the Hilton. They didn't have to adhere to it. Ocean Walk went in, they didn't have to adhere to it. Then several businesses went in and took out their 10-foot easement. So we have very little trees other than downtown, down the A1A. When he was talking about FAR, there were no landscaping whatsoever. So I'm wondering, if we have just those palm trees, is that the only vegetation that's going to be required for the E-zone? Are those just 27 palm trees or whatever it is that we have down Main Street? So I think landscaping is something that you all should discuss in the E-zone. It's not New York City. Even New York City has trees. Secondly is the parking. Several years ago I made a comment about, when we were talking about the three things I want to bring up every 6 months. When these hotels go in, I would ask you to look at the parking that is required now and to reduce the amount of parking. The Plaza brought it up years ago. They are required X number of parking for their hotel. If they have a restaurant, they have to add more. If they have shops, they have to add more. if we do this again, we're going to hurt the hotels that we're hoping to come in. So I ask you to look at the parking requirements for the hotels that are going into the E-zone. Thank you.
Okay, staff comments?
Yes, you all should have received Module 2 of the Land Development Code, and if you have insomnia, I'm sure that'll cure that for you. But the meetings right now look like they're going to be scheduled the last Monday and Tuesday of September, which is 28th, 26th and 27th. The advisory board would like to meet as soon as we can on the Monday evening, what time we will call everyone to see how early we can get started. That's a lengthy document, so the sooner we can get started, the better. We will contact you once we confirm we have the room. I have confirmed with Clarion that date works very well for them, and they have it planned on their calendar, but just have to finish a couple more things, and we'll call you for dates. Everyone is welcome to come. Bring your book and give comments, and if you can't come but you have comments, we certainly welcome to receive those, and if you want to get them to us in advance, we can get them to Clarion to look at, maybe even when they're here, but certainly when they go back, they will take all the comments that they receive.
So that's the latter part.
Yes, the last Monday and Tuesday of September. And the Tuesday night will be a public input hearing like we've done in the past. I think we promised that at every module, and every time they're here, there'll be an opportunity for the public to come, and it'll be in this room to have that public input. That's all I have.
You have others.
Oh. You have the schedule in your package for next year. The clerk is trying to collect all of the calendars for next year. And as we did this year, we moved up the November and December meeting 1 week. But other than that, I think it's pretty much our standard evening. And if everyone is comfortable with that, I would suggest a motion to approve that, and we'll pass that on to the clerk for next year's schedule. That doesn't mean that we can't change if we have to for whatever reason, but that will be the schedule that people will have in advance.
Motion to approve the schedule is printed.
Second.
We have a motion second to approve the schedule. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
What are the
Nay.
board vacancies?
I would just like us to look at December 20th, 5 days before Christmas.
Yeah, that'd be all work. Well, would you rather go after Christmas?
That's even worse.
Yeah. Well, does it always have to be on a Thursday, like maybe the Tuesday of that week, the 18th? I mean, maybe we can change, like you say, change it then, but I think that might be a problem getting a quorum.
My suggestion is
Thursday before?
approve this the way it is, and then we can look and see what days room's available, because I know one of the other boards moved some meetings and the
Okay.
rooms weren't available. So I would suggest, we'll see if we can't find a different day that.
Well, they voted to approve.
What day is,
We just had 9 yes and 1 no.
Yeah, but I just I just did it to highlight that that's 5 days before
but
Christmas.
we can start looking for alternate days, or like
Okay.
earlier in that same week. Do you want to go a whole nother week earlier? Or?
No, that week. Monday,
Jeff,
Tuesday.
You all don't always agree on everything.
What were the board
She wants to
vacancies?
be out
that you have
shopping
in
for
here?
my present.
I
For
got it already. For next year.
for the planning board?
What was on this right here? Was-
Yeah, that's it said board vacancy.
Yeah, that's what it said.
Vacant.
Yeah, that's the other one you have. Who's vacant?
Kathy, me, and
Seed said are coming up. I'm not sure what status, what I'm supposed to report on that.
Just that they're coming up?
Three coming up in December.
Yeah.
Me and Larry and Kathy Washington.
And those are before the city commission. They will decide that, and well, I guess the main thing is if you haven't got in your application to say you're wanting to be reappointed, we need that, but other than that, I'm sure your names will be put forward for reappointment, and the commission will act on that.
Now, how will that work where Larry and I are in the same district?
But each one has two representatives but for one, and that the one district that has one rotates, so if,
Eventually, zone 4 will.
yeah.
Actually, the way it works, if they don't reappoint, if they don't
Then it
reappoint
rotates.
both from that district, which is both of you, then that commissioner only gets one. He loses,
And it would rotate till
and
the
then it
next one comes
rotates
open.
to the next zone, whoever's low.
All right, board member comments.
Yes, I have a couple.
All right.
One, I noticed we got module 2 of this, of this report. When do we get 3 through 10?
Well, you're only going to get one more. There's only going to 3 modules. So
And
you're-
the second thing I want to say, can we do something about this 3-minute rule? That's just silly that we let the fella give it somebody gives him the right to stay up there 12 minutes as we did today.
What do you suggest?
Well, I'd like to see if either about a 3-minute rule and that's it, or maybe one other. In other words, meaning you can get one more, but not going, because that makes a farce of that.
Twisted
Well,
rules.
It happens a lot. It happens at the commission meetings too.
Well, yeah, I don't care where it
They all-
happens, I just don't think it's a very
I
good
I
idea.
agree with
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Actually, if I could make a recommendation, if we do 3 minutes, and if someone has someone that's going to yield time to them, that you just give them either a straight, they don't get a yield of 3 minutes. You give them 1 more minute, and that's it. The commission would generally ask, if you've got a whole group of people, is there one person that can speak for the group, and then just give them the time.
Well, that's fine, but
I think is a way to do it. And 4 minutes is a gracious plenty. 5 if you want to.
I was just going to give them
We
the
just
other
need to
3
spell
minutes.
it out.
Yeah.
I hear you.
All right. Any other comments?
I had
Is there something we can do about that, or are we going to talk about it next time, or?
I think
Just
you can
make it our
set, you can
policy.
set
We just
policy
set
of the
we set our
board.
own policy.
I think he planned tonight to get 3 minutes that many times, and we tell him right
Yeah.
up front, if you're speaking for a group, you get whatever the
And
policy.
quite truthfully, I did because I've seen it done at the city commission.
Yeah,
That's what
they do it.
So I just following that format.
Well, we don't need to do everything the
I
city commission
do agree
does.
with Mr. Hoytsma.
Or perhaps limiting to 2. I guess.
I had a question about the code. Now, is this going to, we're approving this and then it's going to the commission, or we're just making our comments and the commission's going?
What the whole process is, let me go back a little bit. There was Module 1, that was definitions and procedural things. Module 2 is uses, and Module 3 is the definitions. While it's called Module 2, includes Module 1, the definitions and procedures, and the uses, and there were actually some amendments to that to make the uses and the definitions work, for instance. And as we get to Module 3 and they come up with that document will just keep expanding, and all the articles that are in there is kind of the framework that it will all fill in. So the process is that the public, the advisory board, are the ones giving the primary input from this point forward through Module 3. At Module 3, and we have all of the comments that are brought forward, modified in one document. The staff will actually test that and see if it is working the way we hoped it would, and maybe even suggest some tweaks before it would then come back to you for a full public hearing and then a recommendation, and then the commission would do the same thing at first and second reading with public hearings at both. So the public hearings are not coming until after we have the full document.
You didn't tell him about the test he's going to get next month. Any other board comments?
I have just a couple. When I was looking at this stuff on the North Ridgewood area, the maps that we had for the Substance Abuse and Rehab Center, and what was the other one?
The green one?
Oh, there were 2 of them. Oh, and just the abuse prevention, it had down at the bottom of both of those maps, and they're in attachment C, that these are I guess it's saying this is allowed in all of these zoning districts, and I noticed they're in all of our tourist zoning districts. Is that correct?
I kind of read the same thing.
And all of our
It's small print at the
redevelopment districts, Midtown, is that what that is saying? Because if it is, I really think we maybe need to examine that as well. It has the little asterisks.
Like food pantry permitted in zoning districts M1 and BW.
Well, no, it's the abuse, yeah, the abuse, so
Abuse, substance abuse, yeah.
okay. Because I
All the
think
different
there's a
zones
real
up there.
problem if these are in our tourist districts, too. I mean, is that what this is saying?
Well,
T2, T2A, T3, T4.
Perhaps. What it's saying over here is that being that it's a professional service or a medical office, and that's what this abuse prevention was deemed to be, a professional service or medical office. Look at our code. In what zoning districts can you find the professional in the medical office? And these are the zones that they'd be listed in.
Okay.
Now, what we could consider, if there's things going on in the North Ridgewood area, it could be made more strict, perhaps, to say not to include this zone and this zone and this zone.
Well, I'm just saying I really think staff should be looking at this as well, how we do that in these other areas. I mean, this is, if we're calling these professional services and medical offices, given the type of services that they are and where we're saying we're permitted, I think we either need to change our definition that's going to help the rest of the city, or just look at this at some point of how you might want to redo this. That was just a comment that stood out looking at this.
And honestly, this is part of what
And
we're
I
looking
don't know
at.
if this is in Module 2.
I was just going to say, this is part
Okay.
of, this is part of the Module 2, and some of the
Okay.
things that we're going to be looking at, and uses, and where they're going to be going, and
Okay.
how they could be
All right.
applied there.
And then
So.
just my last comment, in terms of reducing parking for the hotels, I cannot tell you how many times we have gone to the Hilton, because we go there a lot, either for functions or Hyde Park, or we have friends that stay there. We have been turned away because their parking garage is full. Full. We've been there when we've been the last car allowed in, and I'm talking just a couple weeks ago, the last car allowed in the parking garage. So on a successful hotel, you don't stay successful if you don't have a place for people to park. Just my only comment.
Yeah, I think if you look through that E-zone report, one of the early
Big
actions or whatever is getting some more parking
Yeah.
in the area. So parking is going to have to be looked at comprehensively. I think, though, that what we don't want to see is every development having its own detention pond and its own landscape.
no, I agree with
and
that,
own
yeah.
whatever. We're going to try to be more efficient with our land use.
Okay.
I'm sure everyone got their copy of the commissioner. Okay, it's very good. That's everything. Meeting adjourned.